Hi, welcome to the Pursuit of Truth. Few things, a bit interrelated. It's still the 26th of April 2018. So recently I've been listening to Subtle Infinities. Am I saying that right? It's a difficult word to say one after the other. Subtle Infinity. Infinity? I don't know. He's on YouTube. He was talking about, it was in his video, normalization of emptiness and chaos. He was talking about how, amongst other things, how we pick sides. We're led to do that. And for example, he gave, I think he's American, so he gave the Democrat and Republic. You know, how you, and I was thinking about that aspect of it when I was thinking about the last podcast that I made, where I was talking about Amber Rudd. Obviously, me, I suppose I would describe myself as a Labour supporter. I believe in like socialism and stuff like that. So I don't believe in the conservative construct, which is about money and the economy. So, and then I was thinking about what he was saying and how the whole purpose of us always picking a side is to distract us. And he's right, because I was thinking that, you know, I was going on about Amber Rudd and about the Windrush scandal, and then I was pointed out by a colleague at work that there's also the Labour thing going on with the anti-Jewish, the anti-Semitic investigation into Labour, which I haven't talked about, because, now is that because I'm pro-Labour, so I didn't want to acknowledge their faults? But you see how my mind, how it was working. I am doing that. I'm favouring one over the other because it's one I like. But the thing is, they're both just as bad as each other, aren't they? That's the thing. But I don't see that, because in the way in our life we always pick sides. We always have, you know, like flat earthers, globers, we have football teams, you have my favourite programme and your favourite programme, you know, we have those things, and, you know, and it distracts us, like Subtle Infinity was saying, from, you know, the reality that both of these politicians, whether it's Labour or Conservatives, they're both corrupt. But I prefer Labour because I believe in, you know, socialist things. But the fact is, whenever they get in power, they won't do the things that I want them to do. Under Tony Blair, they had a Labour government for ages, didn't get any better. So it doesn't matter which, they're made to make you fall into one camp or the other, unless you're Lib Dem or one of the other parties, Republican, Democrat, whatever, so that you pick that, and when your side wins or when your side doesn't win, you have something to moan about and forget about the fact that they're all leading you in the wrong direction. So yeah, that came to my mind today. The other thing was a comment that I left about that video, because he was talking about celebrities and how they would talk against things, but they will need the things. And I had the example of Will Smith with his One Strange Rock program, that previous to that he'd been doing these YouTube videos where he appeared to be like a truther, and he was, you know, talking about, you know, speaking out as if, you know, I don't know if it was about Illuminati or what it was about, you know, peace of mind and all that kind of stuff, sort of having that looking like a truther, but not really with expelling the truth. And then lo and behold, next time you see him, he's on One Strange Rock, National Discovery documentary, narrating a program that is now where astronauts are teaching us about the world we live in. It's interesting, after all this flat earth, which is growing and growing and growing, that NASA is deemed as someone you can't trust. And it's interesting that now there's this program come out where a documentary of, I mean, I can understand from astronauts talking about maybe planet, that, you know, from their experience, but all the other stuff that they're talking about, they must be reading from a script, because I'm sure it's not something that they need to know as astronauts. But it's like now they're being made as, you know, we should trust what they're saying, and they know best about the whole planet now and everything. And, you know, I could only stomach 2 of the programs. I mean, it's filmed by directed by Darren Aronofsky, I don't know how you say his surname. I like him. He's a good director. I like the films that he's made. He's a very visual director, but it is interesting that it's come out now, and these astronauts are, teaching us about everything, even things that are not really linked to space. And interesting that it's Will Smith as well. And then lastly, I want to talk about obviously the case of Alfie Evans, and this idea of losing. When did they lose their parental rights? And I was looking on BBC News. It had about that there's a law of parental rights, but it's not that it's not guaranteed, and you have to fight for who has them, and this, that, and the other. And this is the same that happened with Charlie Gard. And his parents tried to fight for it and they couldn't get it. But then there was this case that I mentioned before, that Asher King, their parents, they were in, I think, Southampton Hospital, and they took their child out, and they thought that they were coming back, and they fled the country, went to America, and he's free of cancer now. Now, if they'd stayed, that child would have died, because they weren't going to treat him in the same way they were in America. It's funny that this case hasn't got that, it isn't being mentioned with this case, because it calls to question the fact that, well, hospitals do make mistakes. And he left the country, and they actually issued an arrest warrant, because I was thinking to myself, what would happen now that he's off the ventilator? If he was on a ventilator, that's a problem, you can't just take the whole unit or whatever, but if he's okay now, what would happen, or do they have police outside, what would happen if the parents of the child took their child and just walked out of the hospital? Whose right is it for anyone to stop them? It's just, you could imagine they would arrest him for taking his own flesh and blood, because they would consider, oh, you're doing harm to your child. What harm am I doing? I'm taking my child where there's someone who says they would continue treatment, or they have some alternative treatment, or better treatment than the one you're offering. No. How does that work? Why is it people can't understand that? Because we're trained to follow establishment. We're trained to believe the hospital, the government, the state, the high courts, they know best for all of us, and we shouldn't question them. We certainly shouldn't be protesting outside, or trying to storm in and stopping them from doing things, because we should sit by and let them do the things that they want to do, because that's what we've all decided. And why should we all do that? Why should we live the way that we live if we don't want to live the way that we live? Especially when there's an injustice. Anyway, we'll see how this goes, but it would be interesting to see, why doesn't he have the right as a parent, as it is his flesh and blood that he and his wife created themselves? What would happen if he did try and take his son out himself? I mean, I know he would get arrested, isn't it? And then they definitely wouldn't allow him anywhere near his own child. I'm just wondering, how do we ever create a system where this is possible? And not only that everyone listening to this and everyone watching would be more pro the high courts and the government and the hospital rather than that parent. Take care, take it easy, God bless, and peace.